1779, Haydn received one of the greatest gifts of his career. A renegotiation with Prince Esterhazy that allowed him to compose, own, and publish his music for the first time in his career. The 48-year-old Haydn was already the most well-regarded composer in Europe, and now had a chance to write for larger ensembles in bigger halls than his court life had usually permitted. And London and Paris were calling. Paris's appetite for Haydn was rapidly increasing. Joseph Bologne, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, led many performances of Haydn's music from the violin from the early 1770s, and it showed. Haydn's influences on Bologne's music can be observed in Saint-Georges' compositional wit, his asymmetrical phrasing, and from his clear penchant for the theatrical. These clever touches pulled the evolution of French music from the simpler galant style into the more rigorous Viennese school of the classical era. The 1780s would be the apotheosis of Haydn's influence in Paris, starting with a widely praised performance of his Stabat Mater in 1781. By the middle of that decade, his renown in Paris earned a grand commission that would change the symphonic art form forever. In 1781, Bologne would be appointed the head of a new orchestra, the Concert de la Loge Olympique, at the Masonic Lodge of the Palais Royal. Its patron, the Duke of Orleans, was the richest man in France besides the king, and he loved to spend. The Duke's Palais Royal was the center of French life, with innumerable clubs, businesses, venues, cafes, arcades, and opportunities to see and be seen. In response to high demand, the orchestra grew quickly, necessitating a move to the cavernous Hall of the Guards at the Tuilleries. This allowed it to swell well beyond its 50 players, providing the largest orchestra and fullest sound that Paris had ever heard. This huge orchestra of Freemasons played in bright blue uniforms, even wearing ceremonial swords and plumed hats. The Concert de la Loge Olympique was Saint-Georges' most impressive orchestra yet. All that remained was truly original repertoire that would vault this new ensemble into the vanguard of music throughout all of Europe. Only one composer would do the trick. By 1785, over half of all symphonies performed in Paris were Haydn's. It was therefore only fitting for Saint-Georges to commission a new set of 6 symphonies from the renowned Viennese master. Haydn and Bologne had both just become Freemasons, eager to assert a humanist's bond across the fraught Franco-German cultural divide. But sadly, in spite of the mutual admiration they must have shared, no correspondence survives. Saint-Georges offered Haydn the astonishing sum of 25 louis d'or for each work, where only 5 would be expected. Judging by the music's quality, Haydn put these princely fees to work. The performance of Haydn's 6 Paris symphonies in 1786 is a watershed moment in the history of the art form. Composed at the pinnacle of Haydn's musical powers, they are the first of his symphonies to be published, and the first written explicitly for such a large orchestra in an equally grand hall. As a consequence, they are richly theatrical, dynamically orchestrated, and cleverly cognizant of French tastes. They are also classic Haydn, bursting with character, wit, stylistic invention, and surprising contrasts. The man who had composed for fewer than 20 musicians for over 20 years finally had a symphonic playground as large as his imagination. Bologne probably divided the premieres into 6 evenings to allow proper rehearsal and to savor this career-defining moment. Numbers 83 and 87 were likely in progress by the time Haydn received the commission, but the other 4 can only have been written with the enormous scale of the opportunity in mind. One cannot fail to think that number 85 was nicknamed La Reine because it elicited the most applause from Queen Marie Antoinette. In spite of her distaste for Duke Philippe of Orléans and his harboring of revolutionary clubs at the Palais Royal, and in spite of her deteriorating popularity among the gathering clouds of revolution, She wouldn't dream of missing her fellow Austrian's biggest moment in France, and she enjoyed it to the hilt. 3 years later, when the revolution would curtail French cultural life for the next several decades, Saint-Georges would join the army and never again lead an orchestra of this scale from the violin. The commissioning of the Paris Symphonies was to be one of his final musical gifts to the world.